So with awareness of the hour, we can hear the bagels calling to us from the other room. We still will take a few moments to study some Torah this morning. I was thinking last night, as I was getting ready to speak this morning, about the idea of Torah lishma, about studying Torah for its own sake. We study Torah not to get good grades in school, not to be the smartest one who's the best at it, not because it's going to get us a great job, but instead just because. There's this idea of learning being a spiritual practice. So Torah lishma, studying Torah for its own sake, this approach has some drawbacks. So you kind of go in and you don't really know where you're going, you're just exploring, and it's like, what is it we're doing here? But that approach also has benefits, because when we study Torah for its own sake, the learning can go in every direction and any direction. And so the themes of our Torah lishma, of our Torah study for its own sake, of Parashat Korach this morning, the themes are leadership and rebellion, which I feel like may or may not connect to some issues we're thinking about nationally, globally, but we'll take this from a perspective of studying Torah for its own sake and seeing where our thoughts and where our learning go. So of course we don't all have the same perspective or opinion on leadership and what leadership should be. And this is actually a good thing. Since when did Judaism get anywhere with one opinion taking over? We're all about a discussion, we're all about a diversity of opinions. I was thinking about this idea and remembering that I have actually met two people whose family custom is to light Hanukkah candles following the school of Shammai. So instead of starting with one Hanukkah candle and going to 8, these families start with 8 candles and go down to 1, which is such a strange thing for most of us, but it's a family custom for some people. So it's all about this diversity of ways of doing things, including and not limited to ways of being in leadership. So leadership, I mean, really, what's leadership without a good rebellion, right? The task of leadership is all about people challenging your leadership. There's no such thing as making everyone happy when you're in a position of leadership. And so this week's Parsha, that's our scenario. We have leadership and we have rebellion. So the Eitz Chaim Torah commentary breaks down our Parsha into two sections, the rebellion and the aftermath. And today we'll focus a little bit more on the aftermath, because I think the story of the rebellion is a story that many of us, maybe even most of us, know better. So to review the story of the rebellion in brief, so Moses is in charge. Moses is leading the Jewish people through the desert on the journey away from Egypt and towards the Promised Land. And Korach is one of the other people who was also there with the Jewish people in the wilderness, and he says, wait, Moses, why are you in charge? Can't we all be in charge? Perhaps I, Korach, might want to be in charge myself. In fact, we're all holy. So Moses and Korach get into this verbal altercation. It's not just the two of them, it's each of them with their entourages, so it's a little bit more dramatic than just two people. And the phrase that they throw around is Rav lachem, it's too much for you. You're trying to take on more than you can, you're trying to take on more leadership than you deserve. And they throw that kind of insult back and forth. Eventually, God steps in and says, here's what we're going to do. All of these people who want to take over for Moses will appear before God and offer special incense, and we'll see what happens. So of course the story goes, the earth opens up and swallows all the rebels offering the incense, but somehow the fire pans from the incense are left behind. And this brings us to the story of the aftermath. So here's what happens after the rebellion. First, they save the fire pans. Don't get rid of any of those fire pans. They become repurposed into tzipui lamizbeach, coverings for the altar. So they actually take on this very important and very visible role in the construction of the altar. So after we've saved the fire pans, then, of course, the people rail against Moses and Aaron, because even though the rebellion the problem sort of has been solved, I guess, by the action of God, the people are still not happy about what's going on. So God comes back with some more wrath, bringing a plague to the people, and Aaron takes on this task of standing between the dead and the living, of making sure in his role as priest that as few people perish from this plague as possible. He cares for them until the plague is checked. So then, okay, thinking that we're still in the aftermath, the rebellion is still kind of quieting down, and so there's another test of the tribal leaders, and this is kind of God's idea here. So all the tribal leaders take their staffs, and the staff that sprouts is the one of the tribe that is going to be in charge. And so, of course, whose staff sprouts? It is Aaron. So Aaron is now doubly affirmed to be in charge, along with Moses, in charge of the priesthood. And Aaron's special staff, now that it has not just blossoms, but also almonds, is set aside as a special remembrance of his power and of his leadership. So now that the rebellion is like getting quieter and getting quieter, there's a wave of fear. The people are thinking, okay, this holy action that we do around our holy temple, it seems pretty dangerous. In fact, all of these people have died. So we don't want to come near the Mishkan. We don't want to come near to our holy places because it seems like a dangerous place to hang out. So now, enter leadership. The priest's responsibilities and benefits are now defined specifically. The priests are responsible for carrying out the functions of the Mishkan, of our holy tabernacle, because, of course, it seems to have some unusual safety hazards. Then there's a note saying that the priests and the Levites, they don't even explain what the Levites' responsibilities are yet, but they say the priests and the Levites, the Torah says, don't own land. They're so busy caring for the tabernacle that they don't have land of their own. Now that we understand that the priests and the Levites don't have land of their own, they're caring for the tabernacle, the Levites' responsibilities and benefits are now also laid out, because the Levites are not the senior level of leadership, but they also have a special leadership function. They help the priests carry out the services of the Mishkan, again, coming with those own safety hazards of doing that work. And the benefits for the priests and the Levites are that the people's offerings and tithes become their income, because they don't have land of their own, they don't have jobs like the rest of us, so to speak. So the gifts that the people bring to the temple become the priests and the Levites in exchange for their work. Now, the very last portion of the parashah closes with a reminder of the safety hazards. If the priests and if the Levites don't carry out their responsibilities in the way that they should, they might die. So then the parsha ends. Okay, so reviewing the aftermath. We're saving the fire pans. There's some blame and punishment. The people are afraid because this leadership seems dangerous. And so that's why the leadership exists, and that's why it's confirmed. The priests and the Levites are going to take care of everything in this dangerous situation. And their leadership has responsibilities, but also benefits. So back to this idea of big picture leadership and rebellion. And so also connecting back to our original idea of Torah Lishma, studying Torah for its own sake. Hopefully you're listening to what's going on and you're thinking and wondering in your own directions about how this applies to you, how this applies to your family, how this applies to our country and to the world. So leadership, like I was saying before, is all about people challenging leadership. It's a human instinct. You look at someone and you say, I can do that better than you can I? Let me give it a try. Now also there's this interesting thing in human culture. Can you even challenge a leader? That's not necessarily a given. What if a society has a king or a queen? Can you challenge a monarch? Can you challenge an elected official? I was thinking about this and I was remembering quite a number of years ago, there was a recall election for the governor of California that I was obviously living in California. I'm from California, but I was going to school on the East Coast at the time, and this idea of like you can recall the governor made some people who are not from California think very silly thoughts about California. So can you challenge leadership? That's an open question, really. But this leadership seems to have this cycle that really plays out in our parashah. There's a leadership challenge, there's a contest, and there's a resolution. So Korach comes up and he says, Moses, can you really do this? There's a confrontation and a challenge, who's going to win out? And then there's some sort of resolution. We see this in our current society with democracies. We have elections, we have votes, and we have results. We see this sadly still in our human culture of warfare. Two nations battle one another and there is a result. But also a little bit closer to home, even parenting. A child challenges a parent's authority, there's a sort of contest and then a resolution. And also from my perspective and experience being a teacher in a classroom, students definitely challenge the authority of the teacher. There are contests. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes not so much, but there's a resolution. So given that we have this leadership cycle where leadership is challenged and contested and there's a resolution of some sort, why do we need leadership anyway? Looking at the parashah and thinking about my experience in life, I think the purpose of leadership is to get things done that need to get done, that might otherwise fall through the cracks. We got to collect taxes and build roads. We've got to protect our lives and our homes. We have to raise and educate our children. These things are important that we need to get done, but they wouldn't necessarily get done unless someone was in charge. Now, also we have this theme in the parasha that I think plays out in our lives, that leadership is a little bit hazardous. When you're in charge, you're responsible for things that might go wrong. And it's important for leaders to remember that responsibility and think about how leadership is about really lifting other people up, not about lifting yourself up as a leader and becoming recognized, but about lifting others up and taking care of that responsibility on behalf of the community. I'm not just railing against politicians here. I think this message applies to all of us. We all have responsibilities and moments of leadership in our lives. And so I think it's important for all of us to approach leadership from this place of service, about lifting others up, not about getting recognition to lift yourself up. And I think also as we reflect upon what's going on politically in our country and in our world about this leadership cycle, we have to understand that this is normal, but we need challenges to leadership. Speaking one's mind and making positive change is something that's important. And even though Korach lost the fight in our parasha, there are many commentaries who sing Korach's praises. He spoke up. He stood up for something that he thought was right. We need that challenge. Now, we also need that contest. Once someone has challenged leadership, there needs to be a little bit of a back and forth so we can affirm and establish who's really in charge. And then we need the resolution. Things need to come to a place of quiet because we need to get the things done that we need to get done. So for all of us, I'm going to challenge us that the next time your leadership is challenged, you embrace the challenge, you embrace the contest, and you get ready to get back to a place of resolution so that things can get done and so that our leaders can be of service. Shabbat Shalom.